Hey everyone, Ben here. Welcome to another episode on the Stellar Work podcast. Just recently, the Scrum Guide Expansion Pack has been published. And while there was a lot of pro and cons on LinkedIn, I thought why not join the mess and discuss the topic together with one of the most influential Scrum personalities in Germany, Stefan Roock. Hello Stefan, welcome to the Stellar Work podcast. So glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks. Cool to be here.
Yeah, finally. We've been working alongside for the past 10 years, and it took me just 37 episodes to get you on the show.
It wasn't my fault.
No, it was mine. I was just too busy doing a million different things at once. But we made it, and we have a very special episode this time because we're talking about the Scrum Guide Expansion Pack that was just recently released. But before we dig into that, why don't you start with introducing yourself to our audience?
Okay. So, I'm Stefan Roock. I'm one of the founders of IT Agile. We are doing training and consulting, mainly in the German-speaking area of Germany, Austria, Switzerland. I have a computer science background, but had to stop doing it since our customers wanted me to consult them or doing consulting and training, and mainly in the area of Agile. I've coached several larger Agile transitions at medium-sized and larger companies. And nowadays I focus on Agile leadership, product management, and product ownership.
You were part of the transformation team at Mobile, if I reckon correctly. Is that correct? That would be something people could relate to.
Yes. So that was the first larger Agile transformation I participated in. I think that was 2008 or
So you're one of the key figures. Also, you published a huge number of books. I'm still completely puzzled how you managed to do all that scheduling around writing those books. It seems like you push out every second year. Is that about right?
roughly. So IT Agile is 20 years old. I started doing Agile 25 years ago or something like that. And I think it's about 10 to 12 books.
And that was before AI is writing all of the books that are published now.
Yes. And that one book where I only wrote one article in that was translated by AI, and the authors weren't allowed to modify the translation, only if it was really, really wrong. And the translation doesn't have the quality of Google Translate or something like that. I don't know what they used. But they promised to only sell it in non-native speaking countries. So it isn't published in UK or the US, but only in India, China, etc.
I thought India is a English native speaking country, to be honest.
Okay, sorry. Cut that out.
Of course not. I will keep that. That's going to be a short video on LinkedIn. Oh, God. But that made you one of the key figures. What I wanted to say is that made you one of the key figures of the Scrum and Agile community, at least within Germany, if not on the broader scale of things. You've been invited to multiple conferences, speaking on larger stages on the Agile conferences here in Europe. And I'm really happy to have you here to discuss the Scrum Guide Expansion Pack. Before we dig into that, for everyone who has not read how many pages is that freaking document? It's pretty huge. It's like
40 to 50, something like that.
Oh yeah, it's 55 pages, and the Scrum Guide has what, like 13? What an expansion pack that is. All right, so a quick wrap up for everyone listening to this episode. So there is a Scrum Guide Expansion Pack, and it's called version 1. So it's good. There are probably going to come out a couple of more in the next years. And it was published by Ralph Jocham, John Coleman, and Jeff Sutherland, who some of you might know. And it's building upon the 2020 Scrum Guide that was published by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. And the scope is to just give additional guidance for the current times, like technology changes, organization changed, and also what we learned about how organization cope with complexity has changed, and there are new techniques and styles emerging. So it's explaining the what and why of the Scrum elements through a future-looking lens, at least that's what the document tells us. And it assumes fluency with Scrum in its design for sequential reading, emphasizing that it will evolve regularly as the framework adapts to contemporary challenges. So it's basically a add-on version giving a deeper explanation to the topics covered in the original Scrum Guide. And just a couple of things that I wanted to point out what the additions are. It also mentions artificial intelligence. It gives more guidance on self-managing Scrum teams. So it explains deeper what self-managing actually means. It talks about immersion, and it's also referencing the complexity theory and the Kinefin model. I think that is new. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stefan.
Yeah.
It explains product thinking, product discovery, leadership, systems thinking, first principles thinking, and it also brings in people and change and how to adopt and how to transform. It also comes with a set of additional roles, such as the stakeholder role, now included, and a supporter role, which is a specific stakeholder type, if I got that correct, and enhanced description for product owner, Scrum Master, product developer, and also considering AI as a new role within the Scrum team. It has new artifacts and commitments, like definition of outcome done, which is measuring realized benefits and value, enhanced definition of output done, acceptance criteria and outcome criteria, and expanded product concept. And a couple of other things like multi-Scrum team giving you ideas on how to scale, and also mentioning more resources so you could dig even deeper into the topic, like I mentioned, the Knefin framework, immersion strategy, executive board member guidance on Scrum, and enterprise models such as beyond budgeting, humanocracy, sociocracy. So if you want to dig a bit deeper, just skip everything to the appendices and you would uncover a couple of more books to read. It's a bunch. I already mentioned 55 pages, and as someone highly influencing the Scrum community, I'm really curious to hear what you think about the new expansion.
So there is everything that's in the expansion pack is, from my point of view, in a way correct and potentially useful.
Mm-hmm.
And the authors definitely know what Scrum is and how it works.
I would assume that if Jeff Sutherland is on the team, right?
And the other as well. So I
Okay.
highly respect the people and their work and what they did for the community. But of course, there are some things I struggle with. One thing is the size. So it's Scrum Guide about 13 to 15 pages, expansion pack 3 times the size. And to be honest, the expansion pack also includes the Scrum Guide. So the things that are described in the Scrum Guide are also described in some way in the expansion pack. So to be honest, maybe we have to subtract 15 pages to end up with the real expansion pack. And so the size is the thing, and with the size there comes a certain complexity. So, and I remember that 30 years ago or so, I read an article, and there was one sentence in the article that said, complicated things are wrong, even if they are correct.
How is that possible?
And the article was about technical frameworks, when I remember correctly. And the argument was that when things get complicated, or when things are complicated, it is really hard to use them as intended, since you get lost in all the elements, interdependencies between the elements, etc. So I find it really hard to get my head around the whole expansion pack. So every single piece, valid. The thing as a whole, I think it's hard to really use it as a whole. So there's one thing. And only a few weeks, I think, before the expansion pack was published, there was a completely different approach taken by Tobias Meyer. So he's even older than me, I think. And he was even longer in the Scrum community than me. So he also definitely knows what is meant with Scrum and how to use it. And he published something that's called, I have to read it, a simple guide to Scrum. So that's in a way a compressed description of the Scrum Guide. It only is about 2 pages long. And for me, it covers the idea of Scrum even better than the Scrum Guide.
Mm-hmm.
But from my point of view, even the Scrum Guide is overly complicated. It's a good basis if you have to create a test for certification training. But to really understand what it's meant, I think the shorter version is more suitable. So, and of course, that's just a personal preference. I always prefer the simpler things. So that's the one thing. And the other thing I struggle with the expansion pack is that there are a lot of topics involved. Like you mentioned that AI, system thinking, complexity, etc. pp. And most of the things are only, in the end, are only mentioned. So there are, I don't know, 5 to 10 sentences about system thinking. So you won't be able to understand system thinking by reading the expansion pack. So to really understand it, you have to read the system thinking thing.
Okay, so basically it's a ramp up. The expansion pack is a ramp up to another expansion pack.
Maybe. So to really use all that stuff, you probably would have to read thousands of pages of additional literature.
Yeah. So I was active on the GitHub discussion with Ralph and John. My point basically was that I was also concerned about the length, and I was struggling with, is it really a understanding issue that we're facing within the Scrum community? Is it a lack of knowledge? Because we've been training, I mean, not I personally, but there are so many trainers out there, and you have thousands of people going through those trainings, get those certifications done. And I'm wondering, like, is it still a knowledge problem? Because to me, I see this and it feels like people still don't get Scrum Guide, so we have to get Scrum right. So we have to explain it in a more detailed way, and then in an even more detailed way. And I think the issue is that as long as you leave out the context of in which Scrum is going to be applied, it's always going to be incomplete. It's always going to be not perfectly, not 100% fit. And what I like about the simpler versions of Scrum is that it leaves some space intentionally for you to adapt it to whatever context you're having. And I was writing that on the GitHub discussion, and the idea behind this was that they give, like, the authors, they give so many trainings, and they always encounter different the same challenges. And what they did is they packed all of those questions that they encounter in their trainings and answer them in an expansion pack, and to bring that out. What do you think? Is it lack of knowledge, or what is it that we're facing?
So the argument of the authors is totally valid from my point of view. So of course, in my trainings also people ask 1,000 questions, and some of them are answered by the expansion pack, and for the others, at least there are links where people could dig deeper into the theme. But my impression is the same as yours. The problem is not missing knowledge. And my fear is that with providing additional knowledge, we may make the situation even worse.
How come?
So what we are missing, from my point of view, is a real understanding of how it is intended to be used. So if you want to, the mindset, I don't like the term that much, but perhaps it's better term could be the stance. So start with something simple, be open to be surprised, maybe in a negative way, learn something, adapt, go over and over again. And that's what's in the end missing, and that won't be fixed with additional knowledge. So, the good part about this, the expansion pack and the simple guide to Scrum, is that it made me think about how to do better trainings. And I think that, and I love models, I love tools, etc. pp. So my trainings are full of models and tools and knowledge and so on. But I think to really understand what is meant with Scrum, Agile, whatever, we would need a lot of more experiential parts in the trainings and maybe a lot of case studies. So maybe it would be more useful to have a very simple description and then saying, okay, and that is what was done and what happened at company A. And then something completely different was done, or mainly completely different, was done at company B, and that was the impact. So that people can recognize certain patterns for themselves and then becoming more capable of really having impact with Scrum.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a huge fan of case studies as they are inspiring but not prescriptive.
Yeah.
On how to do things. The one thing I don't really like about case studies is that most of the time they are pretty much made up by the consultants who want to look good.
Of course,
And
and
that is,
you would learn more from the fuck-ups.
yeah,
And
yeah. Those are
no
the more
consultant
honest stories.
would in public say, okay, I did that and it was bullshit, in inside at least. So.
Yeah. I remember when Jeff Sutherland published the Scrum at Scale case study from John Deere, and part of it was proving that twice the work in half the time is actually really feasible. And he correlated it to the stock price, to the stock charge of the John Deere stock, which has quadrupled, I think, in a very short period of time. But he it was at the same time frame where the Scrum at Scale transition was happening. But he completely left out that before that, they had a case study trying out SAFe, which has completely failed. So it's not like they started from a mediocre standpoint. They started from pretty much rock bottom. They get the state subsidiaries after COVID. And also the 2021 COVID boom, where everyone was like restockpiling on the investments they have left out on 2019 or 2020. So those were all the factors, but they were not considered in. That's what I always tend to like when I read case studies. I'm always a bit hesitant to really believe 100% in it, but it gives you a good inspiration. Whether that's true or not, it gives you a good inspiration on how to do it.
And I always struggle with the stock price metric for company success. So there are so many influences, like macroeconomics, etc. pp. And you might create great software and then doing dump management stuff in another place in the company, and then you may have the greatest agile implementation ever seen and going bankrupt.
Yeah, could be. I'm wondering, because you said the expansion pack influenced on you and how you give trainings in terms of it gives you more options, a bigger pool where you could get the knowledge from, and what do people want to know? Because that's where the expansion pack originated from. And I'm wondering, don't we have such a body of knowledge, and we call it SAFe 6, which is a huge collection of answers to questions, patterns, modules, frameworks, all of that. Isn't that already something that we have out? Because I see that people would neglect the SAFe framework, but then on the other hand, really celebrate when there's a Scrum Guide Expansion Pack coming out, considering a very similar, slightly smaller body of knowledge.
Yeah, I think there is some truth in it, but from my point of view, there's still a difference. So Scaled Agile framework is heavily describing process, methodology, etc. pp. Scrum Expansion Pack includes a lot of thinking tools if you want to like system thinking. And there's a lot of this stuff also in SAFe, or at least mentioned in SAFe, but it's, from my point of view, covered in processes, roles, artifacts, etc. pp. So I assume that, I not only assume, I know from my experience that a lot of people who practice SAFe don't know the underlying thinking tools. So they just read the art thing, the product management thing, the value stream thing, and then try to implement it. So I think there's a difference. But of course, most things in the expansion pack are new. So they were there. They are mentioned. A lot of things is mentioned in SAFe. A lot of things is mentioned in the LEST framework also. The lean thinking, system thinking, and etc. stuff. Yeah. That's right.
Maybe let's dig a little bit deeper into the expansion framework. Have you read the section about the stakeholder role that has recently been added through the expansion pack? And it's including customers, it could include decision makers, it could include users as well. So there is a list of people who could be potentially on your Scrum, if you want to put it that way. And I'm wondering what your take is on expanding that role list, so to say.
I think there is value in it, since a lot of training participants don't have a good understanding of what a stakeholder really is. So when people hear stakeholder, they often narrow it down to internal stakeholders. And they often don't, at least not as first-class citizens, think about users or customers of my product. That's potentially useful. And the funny thing is, there was, I think 22 to 25 years ago, there was a discussion, and Boris Gloger was involved, if the Scrum definition should expand on the stakeholder concept and differentiate between stakeholder, customer, and user. Yes, it makes it a bit more complicated, the whole thing. But at that point, I would say it would make the situation clearer.
It reminded me of the customer on site role from Extreme Programming, which I really like. Like, if you can do that, even if it's a virtual customer on site, which now is pretty feasible to do, I think it's a pretty good thing. So I'm very critical on the expansion pack, but seeing that stakeholder role made me happy, to be honest. So it's a plus on my side. What do you think? What do you think of the what do we pick next? Maybe let's go with the AI part, because I guess that is a big change for everyone reading the Scrum Guide, as we haven't had that technology. Well, we had that technology 20, I guess, but at the time when it was written, we probably haven't had it. So there is a consideration for using AI for each different role in the expansion pack. What do you think?
I see that there's potentially a lot of influence of AI on product development.
Mm-hmm.
But from my point of view, until now, it's not really clear what that impact really is and how big it really is. So there was just a few days ago, there was a study published that found out that experienced developers think that they become faster by AI, but when they measured it, they became slower.
Would be contradictory to the GitHub case study that is.
Yeah. So, and
yeah, go
as
ahead.
you already said, in another context matters. So this was development based on larger existing code bases.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a completely different thing to start a new thing, where you have all this boilerplate code to do, and AI can do that. But if you are just doing minor modifications or some minor additional features to an existing code base, that may be a different kind of game. From my point of view, we have to better understand in what context, what AI concept or tool may be useful. So, and therefore, I would expect that with further versions of the expansion pack, or hopefully, it would become more specific. And no, go ahead.
One of the things they mention in the expansion pack regarding AI is the create agents as AI team members, which was quite funny. I saw a couple of posts from Jeff Sutherland, how he's already managing teams that are completely consisting of AI agents that work together within a Scrum team. But I would want to step down a little bit and think of it as, at least that's how I interpret the expansion pack, is that you would get another team member that could be a very special function that you would not need throughout the whole product development life cycle, such as maybe legal, such as design prototyping, such as HR maybe, or maybe just a service agent that is helping you manage all the different information that is within your Confluence or knowledge base, whatever you use. And there are like special case agents, like you mentioned, like legal, and you would just type in your question or prompt them to give you a certain text that you could use within your product or a certain guidelines that help you create the product, you reduce dependencies to other departments, or you're reducing the amount of people that you would need within a Scrum team, and we would potentially end up with smaller Scrum teams.
Okay, that were a lot of things. So let's start with the last thing you mentioned. So you may need fewer people in your team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's in a way a funny idea. So what the situation we face today is normally that we need several teams to develop the product. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one major thing that changed during the last 25 years. In the beginning, it was often possible that one team developed one software product. Nowadays, it's completely shifted. It's one team, one product is an edge case. And there's this saying that most problems are in between problems. So if your team doesn't deliver, it's normally not the fault of one team member, but a problem with the cooperation between the team members. If a set of teams doesn't perform, it's normally not a problem with one team, but with a set of teams, with the interaction. So if you have fewer people in every team, you might save some money, but it wouldn't address the main problem, the in-between problem between the teams. So if it's really possible to replace some kind of developers within teams, I think we should go for same size teams, but fewer.
Okay.
So if that would make it possible to get to go back in time in a way to have one team that develops one product, that would be great. That would reduce complexity enormously. And then I'm in. And the thing I struggle with is the idea of AI as team member. And Jürgen Appello also promotes it, since from my point of view, so I don't want to work with a machine as a team member. So it doesn't really have understanding. It doesn't have emotions. That's for me, and perhaps it's since I'm old, but for me, it's a completely different thing. My perspective is these are potentially helpful tools, and a lot of things you mentioned would expand the idea of T-shaped skill sets of team members in the team. So their team members could work on more general themes. So you would be You would become less dependent on additional specialists. Then you would have fewer waiting times, shorter time to market. That would be great.
The way I see it is, and that is really attractive to me, is like to be that Star Wars fighter pilot having that R2D2 on top, which basically is a machine, but if you watch the movie, it sort of develops a character in itself. And I could imagine that is also true if you have agents within your team that at a certain point, like in the beginning, they might be just bots. But the more you talk to them, you would probably end up having a sort of mixed feeling situation and not just see them as machines, what they what they're
Yeah, maybe. And in the end, it's mainly what we, as humans, what we assume or how we see it.
Yeah.
There are people who use AI for personal coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that that could be possibly used, but not for me. Since I always think it's a stochastic algorithm there. And
That's how it
is
starts.
just playing something. And that would restrict the power of you AI for me. And another person who doesn't have this thinking and accept as a real partner may get more benefit from it.
I mean, getting back to the team topic and using the AI, most of the other bullet points that we would see within the document are mainly efficiency related things. So an AI would help to sort of go through the documents quickly, give you a summary on the product backlog, help you prioritize, help you identify dependencies. But everything is just about efficiency and speed. Do you think that that is the new mantra? Because when I grew up with Scrum, it always was like Scrum is not about speed. Scrum is about outcome and change you make in the world. But looking at it now, very, very like many things within the expansion pack and many things that I see out there happening in the Scrum community are aimed at gaining speed. And I also had this episode with Tom Soderstrom from AWS, who has been running a couple of transformations with AWS and their clients. And what he said is like speed is becoming the number one, or is already the number one goal for most organizations. What do you think of that? Have you had similar experiences with your clients?
Yeah. So of course there's there's this, it's just mainstream. Every company tries to become more efficient at saving money.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, speed is totally valid, but we have to be clear about what that really means. Creating more impact faster versus delivering more features faster. So both is speed, but it's slightly different. So the second thing would be called a feature factory. And if you have bad luck, you face the GIGO principle, garbage in, garbage out.
Okay.
So if you're not pretty sure what features you need, it doesn't matter that you're at light speed. So that's the thing. And of course, the expansion pack has the definition of outcome done. So this aspect is covered. So I would say, yes, more speed in delivering outcome, not output. Perfectly fine. And coming back to the AI theme, it reminds me of one of my most loved stories or cases. There's the book, The Second Machine Age, and they describe the transformation from Dampfmaschine.
A steam engine.
Yeah, they describe the transformation from steam engines to electric engines within factories about 100 years ago. And then it was mainstream to build the factory around the one big steam engine. Since steam engines are very expensive, and when you transfer power in a mechanical way, you can't, you shouldn't have large distances. And they did that in all 3 dimensions, so several levels and so on. When they switched to electric engines, they just replaced the one large steam engine with an electric engine.
Even though the distribution cost is fairly low.
Yeah. And it took a generation of engineers to really understand the potential of the technology. Since the potential was not mainly it's a bit cheaper. The main potential was you could have a lot of very small electric engines at every workstation, since it's very easy to distribute electricity. And then you could create factories with reducing transport costs, etc. pp. And in the book, they described that something similar happened with the internet. So they argued that the things we do today with the internet, or at the time when the book was published, that's several years ago, was technically possible 20 years before. But we weren't able to switch our thinking. So in the beginning, the computer was a better electric typewriter. And I'm pretty sure that something similar has to happen with AI. So in the moment, we mainly use AI to do the things we do slightly more efficient. But maybe the real impact would come from thinking completely different. And if history is right, we would need something about 20 years to really understand what we have to do.
Probably. There are so many more things on the topic of AI that we would want to cover, and so many things in the expansion pack that we haven't. And I'm really sorry for not putting everything into the episode just because it's such a long document. So if you want to continue the discussion, where do people find you, Stefan? How can people reach out to you?
I'm pretty easy to find in the internet, I think. You find me, of course, in LinkedIn. You can write me an email at Stefan.Roock.
Yeah, or just open up the show notes and I will provide all the links below.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, Stefan, thank you so much for jumping on an episode. Thank you so much for covering this 55-page long topic together with me. I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as I did, and talk to you very, very soon.
Okay, thanks.
Bye. Thanks for making it to the very end of today's episode. It would be cool to hear from the people who made it this far. So please reach out over on LinkedIn or via email at info@stellarwork.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please recommend it to someone who might like it as well. See you soon. Bye.